You guys, she just done did it. She dragged in the parents of New Jeans into this whole debacle, and she's getting a little bit messy. Who am I talking about? Yes, of course, the New Jeans creator and the ADOR CEO, Min Hee-jin. She has brought in the parents into her whole drama and got them to go on the record to essentially say that they drafted an email that expressed their huge discontent with HYBE the company, and also how their children weren't the first girl group to debut even though they were promised, how they were ignored in the elevator by Chairman Bang Si-hyuk, and also, really, the weird thing was the fact that they sent this email is actually going to work against Min Hee-jin, because HYBE says it has evidence that the email was actually drafted by ADOR employees and herself. Because of course the laptop creates a paper trail, which they got another one of from their head stylist. And it turns out that that story that she spun about the stylist was totally misrepresented. And in my mind, I've just been trying to come up with the right terminology for who she is. Because everything is like a half-truth spun into something else that's not the truth, that's always going to benefit her, as if she's kind of playing a con on people. So I was like, is she a con woman? Is she a liar? I mean, she is all these... She could be described as all of these things. You know, is she a predator? Is she an artist? Is she a narcissist, an opportunist, a performer? But what I've noticed is that her tricks take some big leaps. And I kind of got the word in my mind, stunt, you know, because it has a lot of risk associated with it, but it's a big spectacle, and it's like kind of like she's taking big leaps. And then I was reminded of the term, she's a stunt queen, okay? She a stunt queen. So what's a stunt queen? Essentially, it's somebody who cons people and runs games and deceives. And I think there's a bit of a bold performance element of it, which she does have. Now, there's a lot that just happened. You know, she's always throwing out a bunch of red herrings for us to get distracted by, yes, somewhat entertained by as well. But the big thing that she's staring the barrel of is essentially the May 31st board meeting, where it seems as if, you know, if everything goes by the law, it's almost all but guaranteed that she will be fired. Her minions will be fired, and they will be replaced. And yes, on the 17th, on Friday, we do hear that's actually the big day, because Min Hee-jin signed up with the judge. I guess she registered a request for an injunction, which basically means like stop. She wants to stop she wants to stop HYBE from exercising its 80% shareholder rights in ADOR at the May 31st meeting. Had she not done this, it would be almost like a guarantee that she'd be out the door. Now, there's a little bit of some suspense in the air on Friday, whether the judge will say like, okay, no, HYBE will not be able to exercise its voting rights at the shareholder meeting. The board of directors of ADOR is essentially three people. It's Min Hee-jin and her two minions that have been drafting this whole takeover plot, departure plot, however you want to call it. It's a stunt. She's a stunt queen, okay? And these are her, you know, court jesters. And HYBE added an auditor to be the fourth board member. And yes, it's not like one person gets like one vote majority. It's essentially percentage of the share. So that's why it's important to always be careful about what percentage of shares are being, you know, going out there and who's holding them. because in this case, HYBE has 80%, so it has 80% say in what goes on in the board meeting. Now, if this judge sides with Min Hee-jin, then honestly, I think people have to flee that Kim and Jong, because then it would be way overpriced to fail on such a fundamentally basic principle of like corporate law. I mean, these Kim and Jong lawyers, I mean, if you really want to know where the real presidential office is, it's probably in the offices of Kim and Jong, and also former, if not presidents, very close to that level. They just cycle in and out of there. So exercising the basic, majority percentage of shareholders, if they fail on that, that means like something really, really wrong went on, and I'll just save my money. And yeah, don't go over there if they can't even do that for you. But most likely, it's going to be approved so that HYBE can exercise its shareholder rights. And what Min Hee-jin, I think, is doing is trying her best to influence that so that the judge is pressured by public opinion to offer a different ruling. Remember, like I said, in Korea and probably other places, but definitely in Korea a lot, the law can be, okay, looking at it from a generous side, the law can be interpreted legitimately in either way. So there is actually a chance that Min Hee-jin's argument may have some sort, if it has a little thread of legal footing, if the judge wants to see it that way and he's willing to take the risk, or if he feels like it's more of the risk-free option to go with Min Hee-jin, then he will rule in her favor. And she has the second best, apparently, law firm in Korea. Kim and Jong, which is representing HYBE, is seen as the best in Korea. So we're playing with like, number one and number two. She can get a podunk, law firm. And so they probably found something where in other cases, the judge, if there was not a lot of public attention on this, could rule in favor of that. Or what she's actually trying to do is that because she's trying to put more public opinion on it, she's basically trying to pressure the judge. So, like when a lot of people are saying like, oh, well, there's the court of public opinion and then there's the real court. That is true. On the other hand, if you can really win in the court of public opinion, that judge will not want to risk his career. So if Min Hee-jin's lawyers present something reasonable for them and it goes in favor of the court of public opinion, then that's how you get like these rulings. You're like, what? Now let me give you a little bit of a palate cleanser. You know how we said in the last video, bubblegum really sounded a lot like Shack Attacks, easier said than done? Well, apparently, because that was just the music. The visual concept, one of you here in the comments here on YouTube said that it really looked like the Oasis music video by Brown Eyed Girls, who are famous for that song Abracadabra. And it looked exactly the same concept of like that retro look and going to the ocean, taking a little car trip. Like, look, this is not the point of pointing that out is not saying like, oh, it's legally plagiarism. It's more about, can Min Hee-jin actually go around blaming other people for copying her visual concepts and be able to say that with a straight face? Because she's using that essentially as the basis of why she's in this argument with HYBE, trying to make us distracted from the actual facts and the actual legal case that's going to go through so that she can manipulate public opinion. Why? Because that is her only shot, and unfortunately, that is a path. Like, it is a path worth pursuing if you're desperate like this, because it has been shown to work in the past. Now, let's bring it back to actually the facts. We wouldn't even be here in the first place if Min Hee-jin didn't want to get out of paying 45% in capital gains taxes on her stock options. Sorry, it's not as dramatic as like crying in a blue baseball cap, but when she said it was not about the money, it started with the cold hard fact about money. She looked at the stock option offer that she got, which was pretty standard and pretty generous of a standard, but under Korean law, if she were to buy those stock options, she would have to immediately pay like a 45% capital gains tax. And then so she's like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, we need to re-engineer this. So that's why this whole thing about the put option came into play, because essentially it's like more of a financial engineering part. Now, those two facts, usually in the way that Korean media would spin this if they were not on her side, would be that she's a tax evader and that also she's using financial engineering to game the system to enrich herself as some wealthy corporate person. The tears, the green shirt, the blue hat, it worked because we started off this whole journey because she didn't want to pay 45% in capital gains taxes. Then the other shady part. Now this is what stunts, left and right stunts. So while they were renegotiating her already financially engineered, very generous stock option package that was set in February and March 2023, and then she was under renegotiations in January and February and March 2024, like a few months ago. That's when it broke down. She claimed that, that's when all of this like eyelid copying got revealed. No, honey, that is when all of the financial weird things happening, like money going here and there, like to private accounts of your staff members, got revealed. When she said that, like, we informed HYBE about how this structure works with our stylist. No, I'm sure that's when HYBE found out. And then, of course, HYBE also found out about the Project 1945. Your really, really inflammatory text messages that outline a takeover plot, leaving with New Jeans, and then destroying shareholder value. So if HYBE did not do anything about that after learning this information, and then they were able to execute that plan, the people at HYBE would be on the hook for not doing their job, not having due diligence. So what was the least thing that they can do is to do an audit. Do an internal investigation. Be like, okay, you guys, this looks really shady, but we're just gonna do an investigation in the company. Let's clear some things out. And what happens if you're going to be found super guilty from just a regular company audit? You gotta go on the war front. And then so she went on a scorched earth campaign. And she was really smart about it because she manufactured her own self as the victim. She reversed it. You reverse the victim and the offender. If you want to be an evil, whatever, take a look at what she did and study it. And, y'all just, be as Cruella as you want to be, because she followed the textbook and made some updates. So we're going to go into the specific case that blew up recently. And I say recently because then she just kept throwing more hand grenades after the fact. But I think when she realized that her stunt with the stylist didn't work, she started throwing out all this stuff, and she started throwing the parents of New Jeans in front of the bus. But we already talked about that. So let's talk about the real actual substance of why she is a threat to HYBE, the Korean entertainment industry, and many of you are saying, like, even the way that women executives are being viewed. And this is also why I want to bring, this example up, because I hope I'm sure, yes, I agree with you. She's ruining the image of women being able to be in business. But I also want to bring this up because I hope people can start to see how she's just hiding under the identity of being a woman, and not that it's being a woman is bad for business. That's why I think that people need to start separating somebody who is actually a woman in the workplace and somebody who is more of a psychopath, sociopath, or a narcissist, manipulating the identity of a woman to hide her crimes, and have people blame not the shell, which would be, the woman identity, but the actual, psycho underneath. And so, okay, this stylist thing, I think, is pretty damning evidence and information, because it gets into, I think, a real clear-cut example of why you would be able to cut Min Hee-jin easily and legitimately from her position. Now, she was just manipulating this situation all over again with a lot of gobbledygook and then with some emotion. But what happened? An employee of ADOR, who is her main stylist, I guess she's like, kind of important because she got a lot of money. I mean, she got, like, the way that she got her official salary and the extra goodies, she got a lot of money. Apparently, they're saying, like, she even got more than Min Hee-jin's minions, which are supposed to be, like, her and then the people right under her. They're, like, the top level of the company. So, in Korea and probably elsewhere, if you are an employee, you're not supposed to be also a freelancer. And I know this law very well in Korea because I was attacked with it. So I know how unfair it is. I know how the law can be used unfairly against someone like me. And then now I see her trying to manipulate this law, and she wants to have it both ways. So she was trying to make it seem like, oh, there's nothing wrong with an advertiser on a new jeans shoot paying for the stylist directly because that's a common industry practice. Now, what she manipulated this on many fronts, but the only way I could see how this is legitimate, like the thinnest layer of legitimacy, is if that stylist was not working for HYBE and was truly just a freelancer. Fine, that could be perhaps a contract that is done between the freelancer and the advertising agency. And if that were the case, then we would probably be having a much more difficult debate. However, ADOR made the debate so much easier because that employee that got the money from the advertiser is actually a full-time contracted employee at ADOR, which is HYBE. And so under that kind of situation, you are not allowed to have a freelance contract if you are a regular standard employee of a company. And so it has been admitted by the actual stylist that she accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years from advertisers to pay her. Now, it's unclear whether, like, she was supposed to get the money and then divvy it up among the lower level staff, because that's how it sounds. It's unclear whether that, is that supposed to be mainly like just a bonus, or does it really kind of supplement like overtime or additional staff members? And because we don't know, and because it was work done on behalf of New Jeans ADOR for the photo shoots, and HYBE can't account for it, and ADOR can't even account for it, that becomes a governance issue, a very simple corporate governance issue that lends itself to a big area of embezzlement. Because where was that money supposed to go, and did it go there? And there's no system of checks and balances and accountability if it went to the wrong place. And so even if it 100% went to the right place, it shouldn't have even gone through that channel anyway. And like I said before in a different video, how it also affects HYBE, because ADOR's like, this doesn't affect HYBE. Yes, it does, because you basically got all of that labor for free off of the books, and it doesn't count towards the calculation of your cost, which would lower the profits that ADOR made. So remember in a different video, I was like, I have a feeling that ADOR is probably, bragging about how profitable it is, but it's squeezing areas and taking advantage of other people and departments and resources, sucking them down, and then boosting herself up to look more profitable. And remember, her valuation for her stock options is based on the profit. And so it really helps her to be as profitable as possible. And this is definitely a scheme if you have some of your costs, a lot of your costs. You know how she basically thinks like the music industry is all about styling anyway and photo shoots. And so the main cost would be borne outside of the company. And does she have a propensity to use people? Yes, from these text messages that we discovered with her, Min Hee-jin, and her two deputies talking about the stylist, she basically said that, HYBE is onto us. We have to, stop this, and we have to go back to like a standard compensation package, basically where her compensation would be 100% done by ADOR, like through payroll, and that she would basically, because of this situation where there's no outside money, the stylist would be taking up all the money, and her assistants, the assistants of the stylist, would basically be getting nothing, like peanuts, and that they would have to manage this situation. And she said, Min Hee-jin said to her deputies, tell the stylist that this is not our fault, that this is HYBE's fault. HYBE decided to do this, although they didn't even tell HYBE, because they said Min Hee-jin was saying oh, this can become an HR issue. So she already knew. She already knew what she was doing was shady. And look, if you talk this way, how she's talked really bad about her employer or her mother company or Pang Shi-hyuk, like the hand that feeds her, just really bad language. Again, here she's basically saying we have to put the blame on HYBE. We have to take advantage of them. When are we going to get an opportunity like this to use them? Okay, so let's talk about her lies about the audit of the stylist. Now, she tried to make it seem like, this was a nighttime audit. How can they follow my stylist back home and go into her house? And the way that she was writing it, she was like, this was a woman who, and she had her home, area violated. And she didn't say man, but as if it was like a man. No. Okay. All of this was a stunt. So the stylist, first of all, came into work at 6 p.m. Okay? Yeah. The audit team wanted to talk to her in the morning. And, usually, people show up to work in the morning. Now, I understand, especially I've been in this, industry, yes, people can have very late start times or whatnot, but she came to work at 6 p.m. and HYBE could have just said no, you got to come in earlier. But they're like, okay, fine. We'll work with your schedule. They didn't even start the audit at 6 p.m. They gave her some time to settle in and probably put down her Stanley Cup. And then they started at 7 p.m. And then they did the audit. They were doing the investigation. And she admitted to this receiving of money from advertisers, but the stylist was saying like, oh, I thought this was all okay because I thought, Min Hee-jin had already cleared this. No, she basically told them, like, after she got caught, like in March of this year. So she's like, oh, I thought this was all, okay. And so she admitted to taking the money, which is essentially, then that starts to go into all sorts of categories, including embezzlement. And so she said that, oh, but my laptop, because they asked for her laptop, her company laptop. She's like, oh, it's at home. Girl rolls into work at 6 p.m. and she don't even bring her computer. So anyhow, so then they go back to her house and it's about 10 p.m. Although like Min Hee-jin saying like, oh my God, it's until midnight. No, a female person on the audit team went into the house to get the computer. And this is when I guess they were having some discussions, and then the stylist said, oh, but if, can this go like to the police, or like, are the police going to investigate this? And then the auditor was like, yeah, that's a possibility. Like the auditor was essentially just affirming and saying yes to the question that the stylist brought up about like the police and stuff. But how did Min Hee-jin spin it the next day? She says, oh, the auditors were threatening to call the police on her and use police force if necessary to intimidate the stylist. No, honey, the stylist, I think, is already like 1 foot out the door, like, like thinking about her own life. Okay, so then they got the computer, and then the audit team said like, can you give us your phone because we need to see the messages, because the ADOR team apparently does not use the HYBE messaging system, and they're just using private Kakao Talk chats. And so they already know this from other, parts of the investigation. And the employee was allowed to say no. The stylist was allowed to say no, and she said no. And so the audit team just dropped it there. But how did Min Hee-jin frame it? She said, oh gosh, they intimidated her. They said that she had to hand over her phone or whatnot. All right. So, this audit, I'm not saying that the auditors were probably just like, oh, hey, like, let's go out for like, drinks or like coffee. I mean, at that point, it's not afternoon tea. Okay. And so I'm sure it wasn't like super friendly, because apparently from, what I've heard of accounts is that like, it's serious. It's an audit. And so what is she expecting? Like, it's going to be a social call? No. So, the executives at Min Hee-jin's level have to take responsibility. And from what I've heard from Korean analysis, there's Korean people analyzing as well, for all the critics out there. They said that actually Min Hee-jin is acting still like an employee, and she's probably always just going to be kind of like an employee mindset, because she's trying to have it both ways, because she is trying to take no responsibility as a leader, whereas in this situation, she has a lot of accountability and she can be fired for a lot more things than a regular employee can be fired for. And so, yes, in this case, in the court of law, she does not, like, the laws of the regular employees do not apply to her. But I think she's still thinking in her mind that she's like kind of like this employee, and so she can't really be fired unless it's like super tough. Whereas the standards are much different if you're Isa, if you're on the board of directors and top level executive. Not only that, I find this very egregious, and I think the Korean public, if they did not see all of her tears, would also see this as very egregious. Not only did she want to dodge taxes, do financial engineering to juice up her stock options, and then look like she is just greedy for more money and then trying to do a hostile exit with New Jeans and then ruin bite the hand that feeds her. She's not taking responsibility. And is it a normal thing? Now, in the right answer in Korea would be like, no, absolutely not. The leader should be taking, more responsibility than actually, they take responsibility for other people's faults. And in Korea, I think that was traditionally a very common kind of belief and behavior. And it would be behavior that you wouldn't really lose too much of at certain like society would protect you as well. So like, let's say you're a manager and then all these other people screwed up and you're like, no, I'm the manager, I must take responsibility, it is my fault even though it wasn't your fault. That would function in the not so distant past. But these days you can't do that anymore, because there's so many people just like her who would take advantage right away and use that as some way to knock you out of the game. And so now, if you ask like what is the common Korean practice, it is something like kind of like that, every man for themselves, and try to evade responsibility as much as possible. Not that people didn't evade responsibility left and right all over the place before, but now it's even the noblesse oblige, or just like the having a kind of a sense of a conscience is much riskier these days than it was in the past. And I'm sorry for doing this because, oh my gosh, a different YouTuber, I think he's so right when he said that, like, actually if you do air quotes in Korean, Korean people are gonna think you're doing bunny ears and being like cute, and it's like, this is so inappropriate. But I'm just like trying to be like, no, let's look at the real version of the word here. What I find extremely odd is that she's trying to have it both ways, even as an employee, even if she thinks she's an employee, because the things that she's complaining about, you gotta suck it up. Like most employees in Korea, and the reason why she resonated with a lot of people based on that, like, oh, I've been an oppressed employee, is that people have had to suck it up, where it's not fair. You gotta suck it up. You're not the first girl group debuting, you gotta suck it up. It's unfair. The stuff is not... They didn't say hi to you back in the elevator and it's rude. Yeah, that's not even something to suck up, okay? That is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. If somebody from Samsung, and he was even like a top executive, and said like, oh my god, Lee Jae-young didn't say hi to me back, you think he's gonna be going to the media and saying like, dear everybody, he is such a jerk, and this is why I am launching this plan to destroy shareholder value at Samsung because he didn't say hi back to me in the elevator? No, you suck it up too. So the fact that she's complaining about like really kind of champagne problems and doing it in the guise of the employee, wake up, people in Korea. Normally, you would get upset by that and saying like, wait a minute, I've had to suck up a lot more than that. I've had to deal with a lot more than that. I've had to eat a lot more crap than that. Like, that's nothing compared to what I've done. What's she complaining about? But the fact that she cried so much. See, this is what makes it even more maximum strength stunt queen level, because if you really now pick apart what she actually is about, it would truly be things that would piss Korean people off on so many levels and be at a point where it's not relatable. So the reason why she's being so having her cake and eating it too as an employee is that she's saying like, oh, I'm just joking. Hello, I've seen people get banished if they couldn't be fired, just punished, like just really bad treatment at the office for a lot less than the types of things that she's claiming as jokes. in her emails about basically leaving ADOR an empty shell, leaving with New Jeans, running off with a bag full of cash, and then launching a smear campaign in the media against HYBE, and then be like, oh, it's just a joke. You look at like a manager the wrong way. You into the wrong way. You're too late on something, like just petty little things. You suffer the brunt of it, and then she's saying that like, oh, we shouldn't suffer from anything because this is just a joke. We're just joking. This is just our style. I'm sorry you can't understand our humor. No, she's trying to have it both ways, and people need to wake up, and we need to look forward to May 31st because bye-bye, girl. Bye-bye. So what do you guys think? Is she a stunt queen or what? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.